Welcome to the Line Movement MMA betting show. I'm Daniel Levy from Best Fight Picks and Half the Battle, joined now by Dan Tom from MMA Junkie and the Protect Your Neck podcast. Today we're going to be talking UFC Vegas 15 because Curtis Blaydes is taking on Derrick Lewis in the heavyweight main event. Dan Tom, you already know the deal here. I mean, the winner is going to be one step closer to a title shot. They got polar opposite styles. You got one of the most exciting fighters in the history of the heavyweight division in Derrick Lewis. I mean, he's got the most knockouts in heavyweight history, taking on the polar opposite in Curtis Blaydes. But hey, if you're a DraftKings player, I know you love rostering him. He'll go out there, score 100+ points in a victory. But man, this should be a good fight, right?
I think so, man. It's got a lot of classic matchup themes, which I'm sure we're going to break down here. And it's two guys that deliver. They do what they do. They do what they do well. And more often than not, it tends to end violently.
It really does. And we got to let our Canadian listeners know to go to blitzbet.eu. American listeners, stay tuned. Now, Dan Tom, let's talk about this main event because we know exactly what both guys want to do. We know that Curtis Blaydes wants to come out here, get this takedown, keep him down, mat return if he gets back up, and do the whole bit. And with Derrick Lewis, he's easy to take down, but he's hard to hold down, man. I mean, he's got a very explosive get-up game, and you start to gas out on a guy like Derrick Lewis. You start to show a guy like Derrick Lewis any kind of weakness whatsoever, and you already know about the Black Beast Blitz when he starts going out there with the flying knees, with the bolo punches, the uppercuts, the haymakers. So if this hits that third, fourth, and fifth round, just like Blaydes' last fight against Volkov, where I know you remember he started to hit a bit of a fatigue wall, that's where Derrick Lewis might have an opportunity to capitalize.
Yeah, man. I like that you mentioned the blitz too, because before we, break down who these fighters are at the heart of things, because I feel like whether you're on the Blaydes side or the Lewis side, ultimately we all can agree that it's going to come down to who these fighters are at the heart of things, right? How their fights tend to go. So let me really quick just kind of state some things before we get there, which is the blitz and Derrick Lewis's improvements. He always has that Black Beast blitz that Dan referred to here, folks, but it's how he's doing it now. He says he stepped up his strength and conditioning, and sure, that's not exactly reflecting on the scale. You're seeing 261 back up to 265. Nothing too crazy. Again, folks, I'm one of those that reminds you, this guy, Derrick Lewis, has some ninja armbar submissions in his record. When you go back and look at the Raheem Cleveland fight, and in that fight, you'll see a slim down Derrick Lewis before he hit all the back problems in which he cited all the weight gain. So I still would like to see him at a lower weight, but in his defense, his shape looks better. And more importantly, his performance looks better. We're not seeing exactly a process. He's not a process type fighter. I'm not about to call him that here, folks. But I would argue that there is a bit more of a round winning process. He's blitzing at certain times. He's not just smartly blitzing at the end of the round to steal rounds and win them, right? But he's blitzing throughout the round a little more consistently, I would argue. Am I crazy for seeing these improvements from Derrick Lewis? It might not matter against a wrestler, but am I crazy for seeing these improvements from him?
No, I mean, listen, the guy, he's not just some bar brawler like some people try to act like. I mean, this is a top 10 guy in the world in the heavyweight division. He's got the most knockouts in heavyweight history. And I mean, we know what's going to happen in terms of how the fight's going to play out up until the last second. I mean, we know basically the beginning and the middle. We know exactly what's going to happen in the beginning and the middle. Curtis Blaydes is going to take him down. I mean, we've established that. I mean, if Curtis Blaydes doesn't shoot a takedown, then I'm never doing the show ever again. You know what I mean? But the bottom line is that Curtis Blaydes is going to come out here, take Derrick Lewis down. That much we know. But what happens after that? That's the big question, Dan Tom, because, I mean, there's going to be a chance that Derrick Lewis can get back up. And on the feet, it's as much of a mismatch as it is on the mat. You know what I mean? I think that, yeah, Curtis Blaydes did land a couple nice shots on Junior Dos Santos, and Junior Dos Santos did beat Black Beast. So, but I mean, I think they met at different times. I think that right now, Curtis Blaydes caught him at the perfect time. But this is a different matchup here. I think that JDS had a little bit left in the tank when he fought Lewis, but nothing left in the tank when he fought Blaydes. But it is what it is. It doesn't matter. JDS ain't fighting either of these guys. So it's really about how much gas in the tank does Lewis have when he gets back up from these takedown attempts. And also, can Blaydes go ahead and finish him when he takes him down? That's another question I have, Dan Tom.
Yeah, I think the last question is what gets me, because for me, it's like, okay, Blaydes all day. I think you got to look far and wide for any time where I picked against this guy. I mean, I picked Blaydes against Ngannou both times, folks, even after he already got knocked stiff once. You know what I'm saying? So keep that in mind. I love Curtis Blaydes. I like his attitude. I like his style. I like when he was coming on the scene. I like the things he's done since. But if we're being realistic here, it starts getting sketchy for me when when we talk about can he finish, because we've seen wrestlers do well and then fall apart. And Derrick Lewis says this himself. I'm going to go off Derrick Lewis's analysis. If you look at the record, aside from Daniel Cormier, who, say what you will about Cormier, top of the top, pound for pound, heavyweight and light heavyweight, wrestling credentials that blow out the Jared Rochalts of the world, or the wrestler at hand, Curtis Blaydes, right? I mean, he's got the junior college championships along with another guy like John Jones and another guy who trains with John Jones, who we'll talk about later on this card. But when we're talking about wrestling credentials here, it's the Daniel Cormiers of the world that was able to do it. And Daniel Cormier also has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you saw him kind of meld both the wrestling riding styles and that back taking to finish on Derrick Lewis to give him his first submission loss. Derrick Lewis had not been. And back to something I always reference, which is the Derrick Lewis analysis. He does tend to do better against guys who try to wrestle him. If you look on the record, it's the guys who try to strike with him that actually tend to have success, outside of, again, the Daniel Cormier sample size, which I just explained there. So it gets really tricky. And we were just reminded in recent main events, whether we're talking about AJ McKee versus Darian Caldwell, you got one really high level wrestler. I know McKee wrestled as well, but Darian Caldwell, right? Huge wrestling credentials, one of the biggest in Bellator, any sport. Then you go, not big credentials for Alex Perez, but against Davis and Figueiredo, the wrestle first fighters. The point is we saw them fall because, granted, it was early. Granted, it was to a submission. I don't think Derrick Lewis is going to submit Blaydes here. But the point is, wrestling doesn't carry as much water, I believe, as it used to. It's still great. I still love it. If you want to say it's number one, I'm not going to argue with you. But what I am saying is enough people understand counter wrestling now and the ways in and out about it, so where if you're a wrestler or a wrestle first fighter, or you have a wrestle first game plan, you better produce a finish in the higher levels of MMA, especially against opportunistic finishers, because you're going to run into some trouble. Even in the lower levels, we saw Darren win versus Darren Stewart, right? The English guy was beating the more credentialed wrestler who came up under Cormier. Again, it doesn't hold as much water, folks. And yes, we've seen Curtis Blaydes turn Alistair Overeem's forehead into a fire hydrant. Believe me, that's burnt into my mind. If that happens here, I guess we can't be surprised. But I guess what I'm trying to say, Dan, is I'm leading underdog here, man. I think that if Curtis Blaydes can't find a finish and he's going to get tired like we saw in his last Volkov fight, I think Derrick Lewis can pick up the spares in the later rounds.
Listen, I hope you're right, man, because, when we break down these fights on this show, I don't really like to show much fandom. I like to just break it down objectively, but like this matchup is literally one of my all-time favorite heavyweights in Black Beast versus one of my least favorite fighters ever in Curtis Blaydes. And that's not because I got anything against Blaydes at all. He seems like a nice guy, smokes weed. I mean, got caught, popped. So I'd probably hang out with the guy. I like him. But my God, if you do not have him rostered in DraftKings, if you don't have money on him, he is the most boring fighter I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's unreal. But to give him some credit here, Dan Tom, we're talking about a 12-fight sample size here. And, this guy averages 7 takedowns per fight over a 12-fight sample size. And you look at his last fight with Volkov, he didn't score 1 or 2 takedowns, Dan Tom. He scored 14 takedowns. This guy, Curtis Blaydes, is a takedown machine. So you have to set him the favorite in this matchup over Derrick Lewis. And I mean, what I hope happens, what I think is going to happen are two different things. What I hope happens is that, it takes him down, first couple rounds, which we know is going to happen anyways. And then eventually Black Beast can get up, do a flying knee, do a nice little blitz and get him out of there. It's just, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. I think that, unfortunately, for all us Derrick Lewis fans all across the world, Curtis Blaydes is probably going to lay on this guy, probably going to, zap the energy out the tank and eventually either get a ground and pound TKO or a decision win. Now, I hope I'm dead wrong because I love Black Beast. And like I said, unless I'm rostering Curtis Blaydes on DraftKings, he's literally the most boring fighter in the heavyweight division. That's no disrespect. That's just my opinion. So I got to go with Blaydes, though, man. I think he's too dominant on the mat. I think he's very strong. And again, when I call him the most boring fighter, I mean, I got nothing against grappling. You know, I love my jujitsu. You know, I love my wrestling. It's just I'm talking about from a fan perspective. Like when you call some friends over that have never watched the sport and you want to show them the heavyweight division, the 2020 UFC heavyweight division, who are the guys you're going to show them? Is it Francis Ngannou? Yes. Is it Derrick the Black Beast Lewis? Yes. Is it this new guy Cyril Gane? Yes. Is it Curtis Blaydes? Fuck no. So you already know the deal, Dan Tom. But this is Thanksgiving week, so I don't have any new friends coming over. So I was probably going to just be me chilling, you know, maybe one friend. So no big deal. So we're allowed to watch Curtis Blaydes put everyone to sleep. It hurts, but I'm going to go with Curtis Blaydes to grind this one out. I hope I am dead wrong.
I don't blame you. That's probably the most logical thing that's going to happen. But for me, I just feel like he gets into trouble if he doesn't knock him out. You know, Curtis Blaydes doesn't go for submissions. And we've seen him go 5 rounds recently in that small cage. But here's the thing. I feel like the small cage and who he is as a person, you even go back and watch his collegiate wrestling, like, I don't think he can fight smart as far as pacing goes. I feel like that aggression is hardwired in him. So all these camps, training at elevation, all these years of wrestling, you're not going to be able to make that up within whatever the turnaround is for this fight. It's going to be under the exact same conditions in the exact same arena. And kind of like Chael Sonnen says, even the best wrestlers in the world, you can only wrestle for maybe 3 out of those 5 rounds, which is why even Khabib in his most dominant performances, you're seeing guys by that 3rd round, if they're still around, you know, they're defending takedowns and they're shucking them off, even guys at his level, at that level of division at lightweight. Now we're talking about heavyweight. So what Blaydes was able to do to Volkov was impressive. But if Volkov's able to hit those turtle tripod style get-ups using those same get-ups, then I think Derrick Lewis is going to be able to do it doubly so. I'm not telling you to run out and bet your house on this, folks. It's a heavyweight fight. But to see, you know, anything over a 2-1 spread, I always warn you, squint at when it's a heavyweight fight, even when it's proven product. So to see 3-1, I'm not just going as an analyst, but even as a bettor here. Yeah, I feel like the value is more on Lewis, but I'd be careful anybody on either side. This is heavyweight MMA, and there's big price tags on both sides that can be very tempting. So be careful.
I mean, I hope Dan Tom's right. You know, I hope Dan Tom's right on this one. I mean,
yeah, right.
Back to the Tim Means and Mike Perry fight, which we talked about last week. Yeah, obviously this is a completely different stylistic matchup, but one thing I said was that the reason that Perry should be the underdog and Means should be the favorite is because for Perry to win, it's going to have to be like a comeback type win. Whereas I feel the same way here with Derrick Lewis. It's going to have to be like a comeback knockout. I mean, unless he catches him like in the first exchange, it's going to have to be some kind of comeback. So with that being said, he has to be the underdog. So I think it's perfectly justified.
True. Yeah.
But like you're saying, you know, they are heavyweights. They are big boys. It only takes one big shot. And, you know, he did show some vulnerability after landing like fucking 10 takedowns. Then he started to get a little tired. Can Derrick Lewis get back up 10 times? You know what I mean? Like, so that's the big question here. I've seen him get up plenty of times, and I know he's going to get taken down like in the first round, probably in the first 30 seconds. It's just what happens after that, right? So I'm glad that you're a little optimistic here, you know, like that gives me a little hope that maybe the Black Beast can pull this one out. It's just that let me check what the opener was real quick. Okay, so it was -210. So Vegas was saying, hey,
yeah,
we favor Blaydes, but you know, let's relax a little bit, right? Whereas public is saying, hey, he's gonna come out here and extend his fucking takedown record on this guy. So I can see it going both ways. You know, look, I'd love to sit here and confidently pick Derrick Lewis. I'd love to. I'm rooting for him as a fan. I'll be sitting on my couch, you know, hoping that he wins, but I don't know, man. I got to go with Curtis Blaydes. I think he's got a very dominant aspect in mixed martial arts that not a lot of people are going to be able to contend with. I mean, you know, he's obviously allergic to Francis Ngannou. They fought twice. You saw what happens, and it's funny. He says he wants a 3rd fight. I don't truly think he wants a 3rd fight, but maybe he does. But man, I just want to see my boy Derrick Lewis get back up from bottom. Let me take a look at some of these numbers real quick. 52% takedown defense for Derrick Lewis, right? Got taken down by Alexei Olenek. Got taken down 3 times by Blagoy Ivanov. These are guys that, even though I respect the grappling credentials that they bring to the table, they're not American wrestlers, and you already know about that American wrestling. Now, even though Curtis Blaydes, you're right, he's not a Division I guy or anything like that. Still, for heavyweight, he still has an explosive blast, and I mean, he still has very, very heavy top control. So I think he can zap that gas tank out of the Black Beast. It's just that, again, like this tweet I put out the other day, if Black Beast can just hang on, stay relaxed, and take Curtis to that place that Volkov took him to, that's the spot where Derrick can capitalize. It's just we got to wait like 15 minutes for that to happen, Dan Tom, and it's going to be a long 15 minutes to get there. You know this firsthand. So again, what I think is going to happen and what I hope happens are two different things.
I know what you mean. Either way, Derrick Lewis is going to be earning his paycheck that night. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So Dan Tom is going with the underdog. I like it. He's going with the Black Beast. By knockout, I'm going with Curtis Blaydes to kind of grind it out. I hope Dan Tom's right. Let's tune in Saturday night and see what the deal is. So the co-main event, we moved down a weight class to light heavyweight because we got the former title challenger, Anthony Lionheart Smith, and he's welcoming Devin Clark to the top 15. Okay, so this is no longer, Volkan Oezdemir, no longer Alexander Gustafsson, no longer John Jones, no longer, Alexander Rakic or Glover Teixeira. This is not to disrespect Devin Clark, but on paper, one could say that this is a bit of a softball, just in the sense that this guy is out the top 15. Now, I want to point something out real quick, Dan Tom. A lot of people are going to sit here and say that the Glover Teixeira fight took everything out of Anthony Smith and that it was this life-changing beating. And look, I don't disagree, but I almost feel like that's a slap in the face to the great John Jones, because it's like people never talk about that ass whooping John Jones gave Anthony Smith, because all they talk about is, oh, Anthony Smith is so courageous. He didn't, take the DQ in the 4th round and, become the champ. And then people are like, he made a bad financial move. He could have been the champ. And it's like, guys, do you know what would have happened if he would have took that DQ? Do you think he'd still have a desk job if he took that DQ? Do you think anybody in the industry would respect him if he took that DQ? So when people sit here, look me in the eye with a straight face and say, you should have took that DQ, it's like, guys, you have no idea what you're talking about. He would completely get rid of all his street cred and all the years he's worked up to, the Lionheart moniker. That's not some Lionheart stuff to take a DQ there. So he actually got more respect not taking the DQ in that Jones fight. But because the DQ was the big talking point, everyone overlooks what kind of ass whooping that fight really was. And Dan Tom, do you want to know what kind of ass whooping that fight really was?
Tell me.
125-36 were the strikes. Okay, 125 strikes landed for Jones, 36 landed for Lionheart. Is that not a whooping right there, my friend? Is that not like a severe 5-round pillar to post destruction? It's just that, with these dominant long-reigning champions, sometimes they make it look so easy that people act like they're boring. People just brush off what they're doing. You know what I mean? Where it's like, dude, that was because you compare that to the Glover fight. And even though Glover did actually land more strikes than Johnny did, he also ate fucking more than, twice as many shots as Johnny did too. Johnny took care of him clean, man. 5 straight rounds of just an MMA clinic, 125-36. So it's no wonder he never came back the same. His next fight against Alexander Gustafsson, I mean, we all know Gustafsson had 1 foot out the door, and Gustafsson was up 3-0 or 2-1 going into that 4th round. You know what I mean? And Lionheart's known for his comebacks. He came back against a guy who, let's be honest, doesn't have championship aspirations, has 1 foot out the door. Good job. You capitalized on Gustafsson. But then it was like Glover, you know how hungry Glover is. He wasn't having none of that. You know how hungry a kid like Alexander Rakic is. He wasn't having none of it. So everyone's talking about the Glover and Rakic fights as the ones that took everything out of Smith. I think it was the John Jones fight, Dan Tom.
You could look at that from a lot of ways for sure, because that's also when he starts getting analyst spots, right? And kind of that career, spot interjected. And as we've seen with, again, guys that I like Anthony Smith, and I like Paul Felder as well. But we've seen it with Paul Felder where the last couple of fights, even back in the Edson fight, 2 or 3 fights ago, he's talking about, maybe I could go to the analyst route. Maybe I don't need to do this. And Anthony Smith is a kick-ass job as an analyst on that desk, man. I got to imagine he likes that gig. Which could, if you're pointing to flags here, if that's what you're doing, then yeah, I think there's a definite case that you could be made there if you want to have some healthy speculation. I think that's healthy.
For sure. So now, as far as Devin Clark, look, this is the biggest opportunity of his career. I mean, hey, this is your chance to get into the top 10. You go out there and beat a guy like Anthony Smith, regardless of the form Anthony Smith is in. Anthony Smith has a top 10 ranking right now. You beat a top 10 guy, you are a top 10 guy. Now, whether I agree or disagree with that is besides the point, because Daniel Levy's opinion doesn't mean shit when it comes to these rankings, because you know the deal. You beat a top 10 guy, regardless of if he has 1 foot out the door, regardless if he's completely washed up, it doesn't matter. And in this game, like, when you're on the come up and you're hungry, you want that title, it's completely different than when you're over the hill, when you've already, you fought for the belt, it didn't work out. You come back, you took a couple more L's. It's a completely different spot than when you're on the come up. So I think he's catching Smith at a great time. It's just, on the other side of the coin, Anthony Smith wouldn't be caught dead losing to a guy like Devin Clark a couple of years ago. So it's just like, how much did these 3 whoopings take out of Anthony Smith? That's really what I want to know here, Dan Tom. I mean, like, is it to the point where he can't even beat a guy like Devin Clark anymore? Because, like, I know a year or two ago, not only is he beating Devin Clark, he's highlighting him in the first minute of the fight. It's just, does he have enough left in the tank to still do that?
That's the interesting thing here. I'm real curious how much of this camp, he did at Factory X, which I'm a big fan of, how much he did, down in I believe is it St. Louis, or St. Louis, Missouri, where James Krause has his camp there. Kansas City. Yeah, both those camps produce, good things. It certainly does. He seems to do better when he does a majority of his camps there as opposed to his home camps in Nebraska. Whereas Devin Clark, we know the deal with him, right? He's training with John Jones. Probably not getting the best of those sessions, but he's over there at Jackson.
Real quick. Sorry to interrupt you. So I know it's easy to sit here and say because he trains at Jackson's that he trains with John Jones, but like, I don't think he really trains with John Jones. I think maybe he's trained with John Jones once or twice. Not once or twice, but here and there. But John Jones doesn't strike me like he's in the gym 24/7. I think John Jones is doing his own thing. So really what we got to say is Devin Clark is training with Dontel Mays and Juan Adams. Those are the guys he trains with. It's fun to say, oh, he gets to train with John Jones, but I don't really think he gets to train with John Jones.
Hey, don't forget the Beverly Hills Ninja Dog. He steps up to 205 sometimes.
Exactly. He trains with John Jones. He's going to go on a run, right? So it's like, dude, John Jones ain't even in the fucking gym right now. John Jones is being John Jones.
Hey, man, me and you know both those theories as far as that gym and training with superstars and gyms goes in general. So, and our audiences know what we're talking about as well. But, with the Devin Clark, it's interesting, man, because, like, that's the thing. Like, I feel like this is legitimate. Everything you're bringing up is legitimate, Dan. But for me, at the end of the day, it kind of still doesn't change how I feel because I feel like it has to be a scenario where Anthony Smith is shot to lose this fight. Now, even in his best days, was he dependable? Was he a process-driven fighter? No, right? Even in his primes, the best parts of his 185 career and the best parts of his 205 career, he still isn't a dependable process guy, which is always scary no matter what his price is when he's priced as a favorite, right? Even if you're an Anthony Smith supporter, I think we can agree on that. So maybe it's not a surprise, Dan, that he's not a bigger favorite because I thought that he would be a bigger favorite and at least get pushed. But the line is staying pretty steady. I think both guys are scared. They're not as confident in Anthony Smith, but they're also don't seem to be too confident in Devin Clark, which I don't blame them. Like Devin Clark, he's overperformed, me twice. I've been in the wrong spot of fading him not in the wrong spot. I didn't play or pick Daquan Townsend by any means, but maybe you get Menafield. But the point is I did go back to watch. The reason why I bring up his last 2 fights is because I did go back to watch the Daquan Townsend fight as well. And again, a guy who didn't belong in the weight class, taking it on short notice, etc. The things he was still able to do and was allowed to get away with is just still super troubling. And if it wasn't for shout out to David Clark, the best corner man in the world, Devin Clark's dad, for telling him to fight, god damn it. In his last fight, like he was ready to crumble again. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Menifield, as we've seen, not only can be gassed, but he can be scared off by punches. And we saw why he was kind of, in a sense, scared off by the punches to clinch and do things that was against his game plan, against his gas tank, his winning the fight, etc., and so forth. Because we saw that as big, as menacing as Menifield is. Believe me, I don't want to be on the wrong end of that guy or the other end of that guy. Period. But we saw that as menacing as he is, he can be hurt. If it bleeds, we can kill it, to quote the great movie Predator, right? So perhaps these wins don't age quite as well. And even going back to watch that win over Menifield, boy, was it sloppy. And like, even then, I still felt like Clark was on the verge of falling apart at any time. Now, to see Clark come out here and wrestle in the most boring decision ever and just be frustrated at Anthony Smith, even if he didn't pick him or bet him, he putting on a performance that still makes you want to scream at your TV screen, "Get up, Anthony." Would that surprise me? Not in the slightest. So if people want to take that underdog shot, I'm not going to call him crazy, Dan. However, regardless of the previous trend I stated, even picking guys like who I never pick, like Derrick Lewis to win, regardless of the trends that opportunists have had against wrestlers, they've been beating the wrestlers as of late. Regardless of trends or not, I still would feel like I would pick this opportunist in Anthony Smith to beat the wrestler in Devin Clark on any day. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with him here for Anthony Smith for the win.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we talk about the guys who don't have the best process, we can't lump them all together. Because, I mean, to me, Anthony Smith and like Davison Figueiredo are not in the same category, even remotely close.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I mean, Davison's got a 96% win rate. Davison can do it all. Whereas a guy like Smith, he hasn't won a decision since 2016. And I mean, nothing wrong with going out there finishing fights. But what I'm saying is he doesn't really win rounds. And people say that about Davison, but it's false. I mean, he won 30-27 on all three cards versus Pantoja.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but that being said, as far as this matchup is concerned, yes, there is a path to victory for Devin Clark. I mean, we just saw that path to victory in Smith's last fight against Rakic, that he can be wrestled, he can be held down. It's just that I don't think Devin's as solid as a guy like Rakic. I mean, they fought. You saw what happened. And he did drop Rakic twice. I know you remember that, but Rakic ended up getting him. Man, it's just my issue with Devin Clark is the same issue I've always had. He's too spastic. He's too chinny. He's just, it's like he almost closes his eyes and throws strikes and hopes for the best. You know what I mean? And unless Smith is completely shot, which there is a possibility. I mean, 3 ass whoopings. I mean, those 3 that he took, I mean, were brutal, man. People only talk about the Glover one, but you got to start talking about the John Jones one too, man. The John Jones one, because like, again, Jones was so dominant that people try to write it off like it was this boring fight or something. It was like, dude, that's one of the most one-sided ass whoopings I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was an MMA clinic. Like, people got to give that fight or that performance by Jones a little bit more respect. But there was that one. There was the Glover one, which was just uncomfortable to the point where people are criticizing his coach, who's like one of the best coaches in the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then the next one against Rakic was just pathetic. So, but these are all, top 5, top 10 guys. Devin Clark isn't anywhere near that. But Devin's got a path. He might do it. I just can't do it. I just can't pick Devin Clark to beat a top 10, top 15 guy. Who knows? Maybe he does it. But I think somewhere along the way, a knee up the middle, a right hand to the chin, a guillotine choke, something. He just an elbow, just catches him with something along the way, rocks him, finishes him, ends the fight. Then we can talk about fading Smith against, a real top 15 guy after that.
There we go. I agree.
Now, Dan Tom, in the welterweight division, we got one of the most exciting welterweight prospects because we got the undefeated Miguel Caramel Thunder Baeza taking on Japan's top welterweight Takashi Sato. And I like this fight a lot. I think that Baeza, one of the brightest welterweights, that's on the up and up, and great prospect. People talk about his knockout power, but what about his jiu-jitsu black belt, Dan Tom? He's a black belt that goes out there and knocks people out. He's got calf kicks. He's got big punches. Obviously, he's heavy on top. Now, the big question is, well, how's he going to get off on calf kicks against a southpaw? Because that's what Sato is. Sato is almost like a Japanese Darren Till with a little bit more of a karate style. You know,
Yeah.
it's all about that left hand. That's really Sato. If you can shut down that left hand, Sato. Not that he doesn't have much else, because actually one of the most underrated parts of his game is his takedown defense. He's got a judo background, so he's got very heavy hips. He's hard to take down. Just ask Bilal Muhammad. Bilal Muhammad was very surprised about how tough it was to take down a guy like Takashi Sato. Takashi even landed a takedown on Bilal in that fight. Takashi is very tough to take down, very underrated. It's just that you need more tools than that left hand to come out here and beat a guy like Miguel Baeza. And again, the big question I asked, which I'm about to answer, was, well, how do you get off on calf kicks against a southpaw? Well, we saw in his Contender Series fight against Victor Reina, who was also a southpaw, granted a southpaw with less movement than Takashi Sato, but Miguel picked his spots really, really well. I mean, he can fight. I'm going to say a boxing-based MMA plan. He can fight based off his hands. He doesn't need to go out there and just calf kick people like he did to Matt Brown, like he did to Hector Aldana. He can go out here and box people up too. And also, he's one of these guys that's so confident in his kicks that he will throw kicks against a southpaw. You know what I mean? He will go to that inside leg and without fear of being checked. But I also think that not only can he hang, but surpass hanging on the feet with a guy like Sato, but I also think that if he starts to get tagged up, you can mix in takedowns too, man. I know that Sato is very hard to take down. I know he's got that judo base, but I think Miguel Baeza is one of these well-rounded, up-and-coming kids that's good everywhere the fight goes. It doesn't just have to be in one realm. Whereas I'm going to be surprised if a guy like Sato is out here taking down Miguel Baeza. I'm going to be surprised if, Sato's out kicking a guy like Baeza. I think Sato's only path is to land that monstrous two. He's got a beautiful left hand. You can't take that away from him. He's knocked out a lot of guys. It's just if Miguel can work around that, I think Miguel's got a good path to victory here.
Yeah, I agree. This could be a fight that I actually could see go to decision. Sato's only been knocked out once. It's been like 5 years. And you would worry, does he, is Baeza relying on the finish? He's got a couple decision victories, but we've seen him in those fights, like you just mentioned with, Victor Reina. I was at that fight, I believe, actually, Pearce. I was really impressed. Was really impressed. And yeah, like you said, he actually didn't seem too uncomfortable with the stance and with Sato's style. He's not strictly a counter fighter, but he's not going to go out there and woo you with offensive volume either. So he's not exactly like a guy whose style where I'm like, oh, he's got more experience, his style. Oh, if it gets to the end of each round, he should be the winner. Like, no, like I'm not confident in that at all. I'm glad to see the line is respecting Sato. That being said, that it's down to earth. We're not seeing some overhyped or blown up line. I like that. But I do agree with where the line is as far as who's favored and where he's favored, which is Baeza, folks. Those not aware, should be somewhere in the minus 150 range, I believe. I'm guessing it's going to not close too much higher than that. I wouldn't be surprised if money comes in on Baeza by fight time. I actually expect it to, but I like that it's down to earth.
Yeah, this is interesting because if I'm wrong, then what I'm about to say will be one of those clips that you guys look. I told you he's wrong. I told you he doesn't know what he's talking about. But I think it should actually be closer to minus 200. Now
Okay.
watch Sato floor him with that left hand. Since I just said that, watch me jinx Baeza. But no, but I mean, when I view a guy like Baeza, I know it's easy to sit here and say, but he only beat Hector Aldana and a 40-year-old Matt Brown. It's like, yeah, I completely understand that, but look at the skills we're seeing. Look at the talent. Look at the potential. I mean, he's well-rounded as hell. I mean, we already know that he's got this jiu-jitsu black belt, but he's coming out here knocking guys out, and he's good everywhere the fight goes, and he's also very athletic. He's massive for the weight class. There's just something about the guy that screams serious prospect to me. Whereas Sato, I've always respected the guy. It's just, I think that when I look at both these guys, I only see one of them being in the top 15 down the line, and that's not Takashi Sato.
Yeah, man, I feel like we worded that differently, but I feel like we're in agreement, right? Essentially here, from both analysis technically and really from the betting value perspective. Again, I expected it to be higher, not necessarily saying it should. I stand by what I said. I like that minus 150, but I tell people all the time, what we think the line's going to be and what a projected line are two completely different things. Everyone tore me apart when I put Chimaev favored over guys that were like more on the outside of the top 15 and the top 10. And then we see the same public that they gave me hell, the same public that pushed freaking Leon Edwards to a plus 155 dog to him. So it kind of proves my point, right? And to that point, again, projected lines to where the public pushes, as opposed to people who watch sport like me and you, Dan, where we would, if we, were asked dead to rights, what are probabilities and chances, and to be more of a direct projection, those are going to be two different projections, folks. So with that being said, like, yeah, you could argue that that's definitely, it could be a minus 200 to your point, Dan. Like, I agree. I was expecting to see -2 to -220 just because Baeza's name and the value it brings. A lot of it justified, don't get me wrong, but we've seen it burn good fighters, not just expose bad fighters, but we've seen it, expose even good fighters or burn good fighters when you see that Contender Series push. So I'm glad for Baeza's sake as a fighter for personal development that, he's not getting overhyped in this spot. And if he goes out and performs like he should, then perhaps you bettors out there can bank with his success as well. It's a low enough entry point. It's more skills than the other guy we just talked about that was priced at -150, right? It's more of a defendable fighter, right? Both striking, submissions, and this and that. You're essentially paying the same price. Their opponents is a big difference. That's another different math that you guys are going to have to do on your own. But I agree with what Dan's saying here.
Yeah, I mean, look, Baeza is not a comeback guy. I mean, if you want to talk about process, let's talk about Miguel Baeza.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Will systematically chop you down the entire fight. He's going to be busy the entire time. If Miguel Baeza is the guy that I think he is, he's going to look -300 here. If he's not, then, I mean, look, Takashi Sato is very dangerous with that left hand. You already know the deal. But, I know both guys have been rocked, but I actually think that Sato's the chinnier guy here. I think that when you look at a fight between Miguel Baeza and Matt Brown, I understand that a lot of the newer fans don't respect Matt Brown like Dan Tom and I do. But if you know anything about anything, Matt Brown's got the most finishes in welterweight history. He's one of the most vicious knockout artists in the history of the division. So, when a guy like that, when you're fighting Matt Brown in your second fight, when you grew up watching this guy and the toughest thing you've ever seen is Hector Aldana, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, here's Matt Brown, go fight him. It's easy to, sit here and go on Tapology and say, oh, he's 41. I don't even have to train for this fight. But then you face off with Matt Brown and he still has the same power he used to have. It's a completely different story. And I thought the kid handled it well. He got rocked. His mouthpiece went flying. And it's not like he gave up and quit. I mean, he got his head together. He kept moving forward. Actually ends the round with a knockdown. So, I mean, I think the kid's got the heart too, not just the skills.
Yeah, man. Matt Brown put him in the same spot he put Jordan Mean. You know what I'm saying? And he responded. Yep. No, I agree.
And with Sato, he's got very good distance, obviously, because of that karate style. You already know the deal with that. But I question his chin, man. The Ben Saunders fight, he got rocked. There's a fight on the regional scene, he got dropped in the UFC. No, I mean, the Franca fight was a war too. He got hurt there, but I'm saying even after the Franca fight.
Yeah, sure.
One of his last wins before he got to the UFC, he got dropped in one of those fights too. The Franca fight was fucking amazing, by the way.
That was. Yeah. I'm not trying to hate. That was good.
But like 1 or 2 fights before his UFC debut, he got dropped again by some fucking random. So
yeah, it was a no-name dude. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, if Miguel's the guy that I think he is, he's going to come out here and win impressively. And I think in hindsight, he's going to look like a -2 to -300 favorite. So let's see what happens.
I agree.
Now, Dan Tom, this is going to be a really good fight too. In the featherweight division, we got Bill Algeo taking on Spike Carlyle. And both these guys are very exciting for different reasons. I mean, Spike Carlyle is hell on wheels. I mean, the guy will just come out there and just go right after you. And I feel like he doesn't quite get the respect he deserves because he's kind of out there. I know he doesn't say the smartest stuff. He really ain't the brightest. He said some dumb shit recently. But aside from that, if you just watch him fight, he's very explosive. Yeah. He can knock people out, but also he can grapple too, man. I mean, like, he was dead tired against Billy Q, and he was still going out there, taking his back, getting on top, doing the whole bit. So he's a very dangerous guy everywhere the fight goes. He's very physical. But I'll tell you what, Bill Algeo, he's super experienced. He lost to a bunch of guys that are doing very well, in the UFC, such as like Shane Burgos back on his regional scene. So he already knew what that level of competition was like. He gets the call on short notice, goes in there against Ricardo Lamas, who, is a guy we all grew up watching. And I thought he had a pretty good account of himself, man. Going into the fight, I thought that Algeo was just, another Julian Erosa, another tall man that fights with his hands down, that has no defense, that, he's going to get his ass whooped. And I actually thought that he performed pretty damn admirably until the final bell. So I actually think he's a guy that's paid his dues. So now, in a sense, I view this similar to the Billy Q fight, where it's like, Spike is going to get off to a big lead early. Can, Algeo kind of turn the tables a little bit towards the, second and third round. But at the same time, I also think that, Algeo is a little bit cleaner than Billy Q. I think that Billy Q is exclusively a comeback guy. I mean, unless you're not on the level. If you're not on the level, Billy Q is going to absolutely run through you like he did to his debut opponent, Jacob Kilburn. You saw what happened when someone wasn't quite on Billy Q's level. Billy Q will turn up on you and make you know right away that, hey, you ain't on my level. But if you are UFC level, Billy Q probably, has to take a bit of a whooping first, get the old engine revving, and then he comes back. Whereas Algeo is taller than Billy Q. He's 6'1" at featherweight. He can establish that jab right off the bat. He's got some very dangerous tools, the knees up the middle. He's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I'm actually curious if Algeo can have success in the first stanza, in that first round, and not have to come back in this fight, Dan Tom.
Me too. I do see it a similar fight. Like, I think regardless of what side you're on here, like, this is one of those things where, like, you can accuse the matchmakers of having a sick sense of humor, whenever they like when a guy goes up a division, they either like put him against the biggest guy who's coming down from a division to make the size parity. Like, you sure you want to step up? Or they just deflate everybody and make everybody a loser by making like two former flyweights fight each other for their first moves up into bantamweight. This is boring. We're not going to know how they're going to do against each other. Sorry, I just hate matchmaking tangent there. But with this one, it's almost like a parody style. They're like giving Spike Carlyle another chance. Like, okay, we're going to give you another kind of lanky guy who doesn't look very athletic, but he's got skills everywhere. He's going to let you pour it on. But if you don't get him out of there, he's going to kind of come on late. And it's self-admittedly being painting with a general broad brush there. I believe that that's correct, to be fair. With Bill Algeo, I don't like him as much as Billy Quarantillo, or as you guys know from my breakdowns, Billy Quarantine. You try to beat Billy Quarantine during the pandemic. Get out of here. I'm not as high on Algeo as Billy Quarantine, first and foremost. That being said, I am still going to pick Algeo here. You always want to be careful on grading a guy off of a loss or doing the whole, we see that Contender Series math. We're going, but look, this guy lost to only good people. We've seen time and time again that can be very misleading, right? However, when you're defending shots from Rick Lamas, even an older Rick Lamas, and when you even get in the scrambles with Rick Lamas and you're in his kill zone of that front headlock where he's put guys away, he's got those sweet arm and guillotine variations. Like, I love the way he conducted himself in there, even when he was gas tired. Remember, folks, he was taking that fight on short notice. He's not usually a guy who fades in round 3. But I will say Algeo does have his strongest rounds in round 2. And Carlyle, even on the regional scene, from what memory serves, round 2, whether he goes on to win that decision or lose that decision, or it ends up being a close fight, round 2 seems to be his worst round because he's a explosive guy. They work in pockets, right? Even Aldo, right? The higher level guys, you've got that body genetics where you need pockets to recoup. And I feel like if he puts down the pack in the second round, which means he didn't get a finish in the first round, I think Spike Carlyle's in trouble. I don't have a problem with the line. I don't have a problem with anybody picking or even taking an underdog shot on a guy like Spike Carlyle. I mean, don't let his, questionable is a really kind way to put it. Don't let his personality fool you. The guy can fight if we're looking at it unbiasedly. You're completely right on that, Dan. So I don't think anybody's crazy for picking him here, but I'm going to go with Algeo.
Yeah, I mean, look, back to the Lamas talk. It's easy to sit here and discredit Lamas because we've seen him lose to a bunch of top guys like Max Holloway and whatever the case may be. But it's like, again, there's levels to this shit. Just because Max Holloway beat him doesn't mean that some random guy outside the top 15 is going to beat him. I mean, Lamas has been perennial top 10 his entire career. I mean, really top 5 until the last half of his career. Then it was, top 10. And the guy's been ranked his whole fucking run. He's a true stud of the featherweight division. So you have to be a certain level if you go out there and challenge a guy like that. I mean, like, only guys like Cater can be unranked and then go out there and beat, Lamas in their first ranked fight. You know what I mean? But back to this. So I see the Billy Q comparisons. It's just Algeo fights different than Billy Q, man.
Sure.
Like I said, Billy Q, not exclusively, but for the most part, has that reputation of being a comeback kid. Whereas like Algeo has the reputation of kind of being like a better Julian Erosa. He's 6'1". He's the tall man. He's got that long reach, can throw shots that often other people can't throw in that division, like those knees up the middle, the uppercuts come out of nowhere. He's pretty damn good. I was very impressed, and he's paid his dues as well. So the thing with Carlyle is not only is he well-rounded as well. I mean, he can knock people out. He can tap people out. He also trains with, Beneil Dariush and all those guys at King's MMA, Giga Chikadze. So he's getting good work in. He's a beast for sure. It's just that when he doesn't get his first round domination, he's the guy that kind of tends to fall apart. And this is not just his last fight against Billy Q. This is go back to the regional scene when he lost to a guy with a losing record. Actually, 8-11 was the record of the guy he lost to. And, some people say he arguably should have won, but the fact that it's even questionable versus guys with losing records leads me to believe that if you can weather this guy's storm, you can beat him. And Bill Algeo has been knocked out a grand total of 0 times. He's been submitted twice, which was a long ass time ago. And the proof I have that he's improved, I mean, not only did he get his black belt, Dan Tom, but he was in there with a black belt in Ricardo Lamas, a guy who, I mean, how many guillotine chokes have we seen Lamas pull off? I know Dan Tom remembers the Dennis Bermudez guillotine choke back in Mexico. I think it might have been.
That was beautiful.
I'm not sure if it was the same night that Kane fought Werdum, but I know it was in Mexico. I know it was in Mexico. So I know Dan Tom remembers damn well that night that Ricardo Lamas, Dennis Bermudez with that guillotine choke in Mexico. And the bottom line is that a guy like Rick Lamas ain't out here submitting you. Not saying, hey, MMA math don't mean shit. So I'm not saying Spike Carlyle can't, but what I am saying is that even if Spike Carlyle gets off to this big lead, I do think that Algeo is the kind of guy that can survive. I do think he's squirmy. I do think he's tough to finish. I do think he's experienced enough not to freak out in those bad spots. And he's a matchup problem just based on his length and his experience as well. So I'm going with the underdog too. I like Bill Algeo to get his first UFC win.
My man, we're in agreement again.
Now, last but not least, I know Dan Tom's going to like this fight. In the featherweight division, we got Hawaii's own Kai Kamaka III, and he's taking on JSP, Jonathan Pearce. So Pearce is moving down to 145. He made his debut at 155. This should be a really good fight, man. I mean, obviously, Kai Kamaka had that fight of the night with Tony Kelly, which I watched it the other day again, man. That fight never gets old, man. They really went out there, just put on a fucking slobber knocker for 3 straight rounds. This is the kind of stuff you love seeing. And Kamaka is one of these kids that I think you might actually be familiar with him. I think he might be in Vegas, actually.
Yeah,
he might even be at Extreme Couture. But the thing I like about this kid, you hear him talk, and he's one of these guys that, like, he talks about how if someone challenges me on the street, I'm not going to be like, well, I've only had 2 days to train, so I'm not interested today. He's one of these guys that stays ready year round so that you challenge him at any time, and he's ready to go. And he's got a very good wrestling base. I don't know his wrestling credentials. I just know that he can wrestle for MMA. He's got a great shot. He can stand and bang as well. He can win decisions. He can knock guys out. He can tap guys out. He paid his dues on the regional scene. He's very explosive. I like Kai Kamaka a lot. With Jonathan Pearce, he's better than his UFC debut showed, man. And I've known about this guy for a while because, he did turn down a fight with my Best Fight Pick sponsored lightweight Robert Hale back on the regional scene, which I don't blame him. He would have got knocked out in that fight, especially, considering he's had a broken jaw in the past. I completely understand why he didn't take that fight with Robert Hale. And look, hey, JSP's in the UFC now, so great career management. But, I like that Contender Series fight for a lot of reasons. He went out there, he landed a lot of volume. Let me tell you what the exact number was real quick, because he was literally out there throwing 142 strikes landed, in his Contender Series fight. So that's the kind of volume I like, Dan Tom, especially if he had a lesser opponent here. If he didn't have Kai Kamaka, let's say they put him in there with Ali Al-Casey, that guy that Tony Kelly just beat, it'd be max bet JSP. JSP would go out here, put out an output clinic against him. It's just that when you're dealing with a tank like Kai Kamaka, I think that might kind of discourage some of the output. Now, as far as the Joe Lozon fight is concerned, I know it's easy to sit here and say, you got finished by Joe Lozon in the first round. It's like, guys, how many times have you seen Joe Lozon go out there in Boston and absolutely wreck someone? I mean, I know Dan Tom remembers that fight between Joe Lozon and who's that fucking
Gabe Rudiger?
Gabe Rudiger.
Yeah.
Okay. I know Dan Tom remembers when Gabe Rudiger was talking all that shit.
Yes.
And Joe Lozon fights him in Boston, picks him up over his shoulders. I mean, basically threw him out the octagon, destroyed him. It was one of those cases. So I actually went into that fight. I picked Joe Lozon to finish JSP in the first round. I said, listen, if he gets past the first round, he'll probably do his volume game, but he probably ain't getting past the first round. So I had Joe Lozon on my first round finish in that spot. That being said, I'm not going to pick Kai Kamaka by first round finish, but I am going to pick Kai Kamaka. I think he probably wins a decision here. I think we see a better showing from JSP. I don't think he just gets ran through in the first, 2 minutes of the fight like he did. I think that when you make your UFC debut in Boston against Joe Lozon, like, dude, unless you're some super prospect, that's going to be overwhelming. Like, the crowd is so goddamn loud at the, TD Garden, and you got Joe Lozon, a guy you grew up watching in front of you. It's deafening, and Joe Lozon has got no issues with however many people are in the crowd. Joe Lozon's been fighting forever, man. Joe Lozon, and you know that even when you beat Joe Lozon, there's a storm to weather in that first round. But you have to be a certain level to weather it. JSP just wasn't on that level, man. But now he's dropping a weight class. He's had a full camp. I expect a better performance. And he actually does have a path here, Dan Tom. He's got a path with volume. He throws more volume than Kamaka. It's just that I think Kamaka's got the more impactful shots. I think that Kamaka can mix in the takedowns. And overall, I think Kamaka's got the smarts to come out here and win this decision. So I got to go with Kai Kamaka III to get his second UFC win.
I agree, man. I like Kamaka here, not just because he's the Hawaiian, but man, speaking of Hawaiians, there's a lot of Kamaka families on Hawaii, and I feel like all of them fight. If ever known someone with their last name Kamaka, is usually they're in a fight. So it doesn't surprise me that we got another strong one, and he is at Extreme Couture, looking good, and he means that what he says when you quoted him. This guy does stay ready. How else could he have answered that volume question? That is the one question you got to worry about, I think, with the JSP or him getting rocked. But I think the Hawaiian chin will hold, needless to say. But we've seen him answer that call. And the reason why he was able to answer the call and the reason why that fight was so amazing is because those guys did it on short notice, right? And he was out here in Vegas already staying ready, posting pictures, tagging the UFC weeks before that in shape. And you go fast forward to the pictures on his social media now. He looks in a similar shape. He's out there doing pads with Ray Sefo, staying sharp. So this guy looks completely ready against a guy who's going to the weight class for the first time in JSP. Now, I believe JSP is working with Fight Ready. I've seen it on his social media. That's a good camp. Obviously, I don't need to tell you that, Dan. So I'm curious. I would hope to see and agree with you there that we're going to see a better JSP win or lose. I just feel like this is a real tough matchup for him to come down against a tank who can wrestle. Again, when he's not up here in Vegas, he's with that Ray Cooper crew, right? And I don't think it goes much beyond high school, like Ray Cooper's wrestling credentials. But as you said with Ray Cooper, another stout, strong guy for his division, right? They know how to put that boxing style to work. And I think his left hook is going to have plenty of play. And after watching both their fights recently before this show, Dan, boy, did I see that opening there. Now, Kamaka's shorter. He shells and he dips. So JSP's favorite shot's his uppercut, right? He's going to have some play there too. But like you said, Dan, it's kind of easy to see who the harder hitter here is. And not just with that kind of tall guy defense that JSP has a little bit of. I got to imagine he's going to have even more of at 145. And it's going to have an even higher price tag with the potential draining he's doing. Boy, do I see that left hook from Kai Kamaka being there all day. But even if he doesn't finish him with it, I'm not worried because I feel like we've seen him answer the volume, and we've seen the layers of JSP, who's gotten his purple belt since the ass kicking from Joe Lozon. He has been working on it, folks. I don't think it's going to be enough, though, to get anything on the wrestling. We saw Tony Kelly, what he can offer from the bottom. He wasn't able to get any of that off against Kamaka, and that's for good reason. So I think Kamaka's the safer chalk, let's just say, on this card.
Real quick, is there any truth to Ray Cooper and Kamaka being cousins?
Yeah, they're all up in each other's Instagram stuff. I've seen it before this too, but yeah, as recently as 2 or 3 months ago, and then he made the jump up here to Vegas. It looks like.
Nice. That's good to hear. Yeah, it's going to be exciting because both guys are hungry. Both guys want to prove a point that, you know, they're going to move up the rankings, that they're one day going to be something in this division. And you know that they're hungry, they're motivated, they want this. And especially in that weight class, man. I mean, at 145, you got to trim the fat. I mean, there's such little margin for error. So I can't wait to see that fight, Dan Tom.
Me too, man. I'm excited.
Well, Dan Tom, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this special edition of the Line Movement MMA betting show. Thank you very much to all our fans for your support. Make sure y'all give this video a like and a subscribe. And also, we're on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Make sure y'all give us a 5-star review. We truly appreciate it. And also, Canadian listeners, blitzbet.eu. Want to give a quick shout out to everybody behind the scenes. Our producer, Jordan. Thank you very much, Jordan. To everybody else, Brian, Joe, Nick, Dan, James, everybody else. Thank you guys very, very much. And again, once again, a shout out to all our fans, our listeners, our supporters. You don't know how much we truly appreciate all your support. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week for the next card. Dan Tom, I hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. I hope all our listeners have a very happy Thanksgiving as well. And everybody stay safe, enjoy the fights, and we'll speak soon.
What's up, everybody? If you enjoyed our show, be sure to like the video below, subscribe to our channel, and follow all the content over at linemovement.com.